I guess as we talk about college and career readiness, you know, it's a buzzword or a set of buzzwords that are out there now. And I think you had an earlier presentation this year from Michael Gaines with Sinclair Community College, and he talked quite a bit about college readiness and what they're doing at the post-secondary level, particularly in a community college, to try to make sure that students as they come are as best prepared to come to them in the college. And I guess today we would like to focus on that career readiness piece of that phrase. And I guess when I say career readiness, I'm curious as to what comes to your mind first. You know, what questions do you have? Or when I say career readiness, what are the first few words that you think of? And if you're shy, I'll pull you out of your shell. So help me. Career readiness.
Exploration.
Exploration.
Another E word would be experience.
Experience. Career readiness could be some experience.
I think typically it's college. That's what comes to mind when you hear career readiness.
Okay. Okay. And actually, I think one of the articles that you shared today talked a little bit about that in the packet. So, you know, go ahead.
Not just the minimum education, regular education, as she said, for college.
Okay. What about those folks that, go ahead.
Employment competence.
Employment competence. And there is that whole part that we teach in trying to get our students ready for careers called employability skills. So now when I say employability skills, your mind's probably open up to a lot of other things. What are some of those things? Employability skills.
Writing.
Communication.
Communicating. Big C. Communicate. Being able to write those directions, be able to pass on that information, being able to read that particular manual and correct or build or shape. And so that is huge in being career ready. You know, so the things that we try to do in this room from an English language arts perspective in helping our students become career ready, it may not be a review of that piece of British literature, but it definitely is the ability to be able to read and navigate those directions. And I don't know about you, but anytime we buy something at home, you know, and directions come with it, you have to assemble. My wife and I have this standard procedure. I go get the toolkit, she unboxes, she pulls the directions out, and I start to assemble. When I get hung up, I say, okay, Suzanne, I think I'm on step 4. Read that to me and tell me what I'm missing, what I'm doing wrong. And so, you know, I am the hands-on, let's do it, let's put it together, and then when I need to know, I will read. I will not read in advance. I'm admitting that in front of the group, you probably would go, oh, shame. But, you know, seriously, I hope other people do that. But, you know, seriously, you know, being able to navigate directions, being able to write directions is some of the most difficult technical writing that can go on. And having students be career ready with those types of skills, I think they're homeschool and go to another partner school for a career tech offering. In that scenario, then we have the larger urban districts, the big 7. And if you're from one of those districts, you know, you may have your own career technical education. And in many cases, they've started to develop magnet schools, where students that are interested in the allied health field, or they're interested in the engineering field, or they're interested in the agricultural field, they may go to a particular site and study career tech education. And in those cases, I think it's probably even a richer experience because they've started to really integrate the academics. And so when we talk about writing like we did before, we use examples of writing those directions in that particular field of study, or reading those directions and being able to interpret. And so it's a much more integrated delivery system. And then, of course, the system that Lon and I are part of are the career tech centers. There are 49 of those in the state. Those 49 career tech centers are a consortium, basically, of local districts that possibly because of size or desire to come together with others, they have followed the state law back in the 60s and 70s and become a part of those consortiums. Those originally were joint vocational school districts because they were a jointure. And if you still read the state law, they're still considered that. But we've tried to get away from that vocational name, as Jan Bray said, and it's no longer your mother and father's career tech. but it's now career technical education. And that true career tech delivery, if done correctly at the Career Center, is a much richer experience because we really tried to tie those academics and career experiences together. And when we talk about career readiness, the only way that we're going to be able to have students career ready is if we have the academics and the career tech component blended together in that fashion. And because the students, taking those things separately is not a good thing. It's not a promise. We can go to the next slide. We have a range of students at our Career Center. We have about 1,800 students at our particular site. We're probably the largest single site career tech center in the state. So we have lots of kids from 27 different partner districts. We also have some open enrollment students. So we probably serve students from 35 different districts at our Career Tech Center. We have students that are on IEPs. We have students that are valedictorians at their home schools. So we have a real broad spectrum of participation in cognitive ability. I will tell you that so many of the students that come to us, if you looked at their grade cards in many cases at their home district, except for those valedictorian types, they were probably BC students because they probably didn't apply themselves. And when they come to us their junior year, and all of a sudden they have that passion, and they get into that career tech component, and they say, gosh, I really need to know that algebra now because I can't solve this problem. I can't find this unknown in my engineering class or in my architect drafting class, or I can't in this cosmetology class. I'm trying to calculate this mix for this new hair treatment, and I need to know some chemistry, and I need to know how those interact. And so all of a sudden the student has a desire to learn. My wife's a fourth grade teacher, and when the kids come to her, for the most part, they still come to her, does anything else teach me? Most of you that have had high school experience, they come in like this. Go ahead and try to teach me. Go ahead, give it your best shot. And so from that standpoint, our students, once they arrive and they find their interest, they find their desire to learn, then all of a sudden those grades start to go up. And all of a sudden the application of those academics really start to have some meaning. The neat thing about what we do at career centers, not only do we get them career ready, which means they could go out and start in the job field, but we try to also get them college ready so that they have an opportunity to be, what is the last bullet on this slide, a lifelong learner. To be a lifelong learner, you have to have certain tools in the toolkit. Reading, writing, there's math skills, the ability to problem solve, to critically think, to divide things up in your mind and refit and innovate and create. And so all of a sudden, we've really taken on the whole process of education and not just segmented it into periods and subject matter. And so I'm really excited in the delivery model that exists. In my mind, you hear a lot about STEM, science, technology, engineering, math. I'll be honest with you, I think career technical education was STEM before STEM was cool. Because it really was the application of the math and the technology and the engineering. And so it's just amazing to me that we come up with new acronyms for things that, we're kind of already doing out there. The jobs and careers that can't be outsourced. We're training students to come to your home and fix that furnace when it breaks. And when it's -2, like it was about a week and a half ago, you want to see that person there, and you want them to be competent. You want them to be able to read the manual on your particular furnace and be able to fix it right then. And that person's not going to have a job that's not going to get outsourced to another country. Okay? At least at this point in time, I can't foresee that. So being able to integrate those technical and academic skills and to apply those in a job that won't be outsourced is pretty important in these economic times. On our next slide, share with you that some of the results that we're held to, we all have these report cards for schools, and we have a report card for career tech centers through the Perkins legislation. And part of that is the results that we have with our overall, what we call post-program placement. When these students leave us, it's important for us to know that they're getting jobs, or they're going on to higher education, or both. And that's why that number, if you see it, 92.54% are doing some sort of placement that we would want them to be once they leave. And you see those numbers below, and you may not be a mathematician, but you can add those up and say, well, that's over 100%, you know. And the reason that is, you'll see that there are a lot of our students that go into higher education or some sort of post-secondary training, but they're also working in their career field, which, if any of you have sent your own children off to college, it's nice if they can help support some of those expenses, you know, in that college experience. So a lot of our students will work and go to college and support themselves, and that's a really great way to move forward in life in that career area. Apprenticeships, that number's a little low at this point in time. 2008 was when a lot of our industries that were working with us on apprenticeships were saying, ooh, we're feeling an economic downturn. We probably can't place students right now on apprenticeships. And we'll talk about apprenticeships a little bit later, but that number has started to climb back up. In 2009, it went up to 1.55. I looked that up the other day. I didn't have the rest of the numbers at my fingertips, so I still use 2008. So that number has started to return. And then, of course, some of our students go into the military, and they're able to go into the military in particular roles because they have specific training in their background that will qualify them to have a particular path in the military. On the next slide, Lon's going to talk to us a little bit about Common Core state standards.
Yeah, now we're going to make the link to the Common Core. And what's kind of known as the appendix to the Common Core is your handout here, that there are Common Core standards for English language, arts, and technical subjects. And so that's the part of the Common Core that we're going to talk about the most right now. I'm going to quote from the introduction to that section, that literacy standards for grades 6 and above are predicated on teachers of technical subjects using their content area expertise to help students meet the particular challenges of reading, writing, speaking, listening, and language in their respective fields. Now, the shortcut term for that is reading and writing across the curriculum, which is not a new concept. The Common Core just reinforces that. And I know that many of you in your roles support teachers other than English teachers in being able to teach their subject and teaching literacy skills at the same time. And that's what this appendix kind of thing is like. This requires some shift in our thinking to meet the expectations of the Common Core. The overwhelming focus of writing throughout high school should be on arguments and informative, explanatory texts. The introduction to this section of the Common Core quotes the 2010 NAEP framework for grade 12, and notice that they're asking for 40% of writing to be persuasive, 40% to be explanatory, and 20% to be conveying experience. And that may be that those percentages are a shift from the way English language arts has traditionally been.
But one of the things it does say is that it's supposed to be happening, like you said, across the curriculum.
Yes.
That it's not like English language arts now has to change huge amounts of not doing literature, you know, when you look at the fiction, nonfiction, or writing. I mean, at least in their footnote, they talk about that.
Yes, that does, it's across the school, but still within the English language arts program, I'm going to say there probably should be some shift. You know, most of us got in the field because we love literature, and we love creative writing and those kinds of things. And we may need to take a look at our practice and what we love and decide if we need to start exploring some new areas of expertise for ourselves as English language arts practitioners. If we need to teach more persuasive writing, which is very difficult writing. If we need to teach some technical writing, which let me tell you is very difficult writing. How many of you have written a memo that you thought was really clear with directions and the results were a mess? I can speak to that. And you know, and that's what people are doing in their real lives. So while I love the literature and I respect the creative writing, I was never too good at it, but you know, I think we need to examine our practice and perhaps make some shifts. The standards demand a significant amount of reading of informational text that should take place in and outside the ELA classroom. The 2009 NAEP reading framework for grade 12 said that 70% of what kids read should be informational, 30% literary. And that's probably a challenge to most of our thinking. Now there is literary nonfiction, like Martin Luther King's speech. And then there are also things that are more in line with what Bill Daggett calls document literacy. You know, being able to understand complex documents. So I want to reiterate what Harold said, that career tech education is the common core and even more. And now start going through some evidence for what people need to be able to do in real life, how they need to be able to use their education. Back when you saw the results from our school, we talked about employment, apprenticeship, and the military. And I'm going to go through those in that same order and show you what some of the demands are in the real world in those areas. You have an article, after you get through the Common Core section of your handouts, you have an article from the International Center for Leadership and Education that's titled What We Know About Adolescent Reading. Now, and that's Bill Daggett, some of you may recognize his name. And I want to tell you that when you look at the research list, the references for the Common Core, you do not find the International Center for Leadership and Education. And I don't know enough about education politics to know why that is. I found it kind of surprising, but be that as it may, that wasn't some of the input to the Common Core. The International Center has done some research about the Lexile requirements for reading. And there's a chart in your handouts, and you will notice that entry-level careers, and if you've got sharp eyes, you can read what they actually are in your handout. They're higher than personal use reading, which is higher than common classroom materials, which is higher than where high school students read. Entry-level job reading requirements exceed the reading requirements of all but the most technical college coursework. Whoa. We're talking about entry-level jobs. In fact, the literacy requirements for entry-level jobs exceeds the literacy requirements for mid and high-level jobs, because the entry-level jobs tend to be very technical. It is very difficult, rigorous reading. The International Center for Leadership also points out that literacy includes information locating and retrieval, information processing, information application, evaluation, and synthesis. And they talk quite a bit about document literacy. When you do your taxes, if you do your own taxes, you will understand the term document literacy. That you have to locate a lot of information, you have to think about it, you have to put it together, and you have to use it. And that's not easy stuff. Now, if you page back in your handouts to where you've got a handout that says work keys and ACT. ACT was used a whole lot as a resource for writing the Common Core. ACT has a test called work keys. Work keys is to employers as the SAT, or ACT, wrong test, is to colleges. Work keys is a test that measures skills that people need on the job. And to understand the way these charts are set up, for this particular test, which is called Reading for Information, ACT profiled 4,561 jobs and analyzed what kind of reading for information skill, what level of skill were needed in those jobs. And then they've given the test to 795,497 people to see what their scores were. And you can see from the chart that the work key scores are single digits, and this test goes up to a 7. They're fairly simple scores. They're like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Most jobs require at least a 4 on reading for information. If you look at the page after this chart in your handouts, it will explain what a 4 means in reading for information. You know, how difficult that is, what kind of reading that is, and it explains why it's difficult. So that gives you an idea of what work keys is looking for in testing.
Well, if I could add
Yes.
right there. On the other side of what we do is also adult education. You know, we have a lot of students that come to us for retraining if they've lost their jobs, or if they haven't found their way after they left the traditional high school into an employment opportunity, then they may come to us. Sometimes we're a first step before they come to a community college. And so many times when they come to us, you know, they come to us from anywhere, any age. And so we have to find a way to kind of see what their skill sets are. And we use the ACT Work Keys test to be able to find out where they're at in their learning. Reading for information, basic mathematics, and writing are the 3 that we use. And we take those scores then, and if they need remediation, there's actually a product called Key Train. Get it? Work Keys, Key Train. And those folks then have the opportunity to come back in and utilize Key Train to then work and retest and better their score. Those profiles that are on the left that Lana talked about, you know, if we have someone that comes in and says, you know, I want to be an LPN, or I would like to, you know, be an engineer, or I want to be a heavy equipment operator, we can actually go to ACT and look at that job profile and say that if you're going to be a policeman, or if you're going to be in some other area of law enforcement, if you're going to be an EMT, it requires a 4, 4, and a 4. Or it may require a 5, 4, and 4. And then we know the score that they need on the Work Keys test for them to be able to enter into that career field and be successful. Because we would just be taking their money and providing classes, and they would be struggling if they weren't prepared before they took a lot of those career-related classes. So again, Career Ready includes the academic portion, you know, being up to speed so that they can move forward. And the ACT product has been tested and used for quite some time in adult education.
The next Work Keys test that we have an example of is locating information. And this is the skill people use with workplace graphics. You know, we talk about being able to read graphics. That's becoming increasingly important in our daily lives. And there you can see that it generally takes a 4 or higher to be successful. And you have an example of what a 4 item is like, how much complexity is in a 4. Another test is business writing. And business writing are that's the skills individuals use when they write an original response to a work-related situation. And there, people generally need a 3 or higher to be successful. And you have an example of what a 3 is like. Or no, 4. I'm sorry, I gave you a 4. Moving on, we have listening. A hard thing to teach and assess, but how important is listening in daily life and on the job? The listening test tests the skills people use when they receive verbal information in the workplace and relay it to another person. And you can see what levels are required and what a level 3 task is like. And then we have writing. And writing on this test means the skill individuals use when they write messages that relay workplace information between people. It's actually kind of like a listening test plus. They use a script and then require someone to write in response to that script. And you can see what a level 3 response requires in writing. And we also talked about schools coming out, students going into apprenticeships. And for some careers, apprenticeship is post-secondary education. If you're in plumbing and pipe fitting, you're probably not going to find an associate degree program in plumbing and pipe fitting. You're going to become an apprentice. Just as our school offers articulated college credit and dual enrollment college credit, we have apprenticeship that starts in high school, and kids really get a leg up on their apprenticeship by starting their senior year as apprentices. You have a handout here from the Associated Builders and Contractors, and it refers to the TABE, the Test of Adult Basic Education. They require people who want to be apprentices in their programs to take the TABE, and you can see that to be in electrical trades, you need at least a grade level 10 on the TABE. Now, I went a little farther with electrical trades. If you turn the page, you have information from the National Joint Apprenticeship and Training Committee of Electrical. It's a long title there. But anyway, it talks about the jobs we're talking about here are outside linemen, inside wiremen, VDV installer technicians, and residential wiremen. And then you have a sample of the test that students going through that kind of apprenticeship have to take, the reading comprehension test, in order to get in the program. And I found it very interesting that the test was about Mayan civilization. It was nonfiction, that it didn't have to do with reading about electricity and those kinds of jobs. That's what they chose. Another outcome for our students is the military, and you may be familiar with the ASVAB test. Your next handout's about the ASVAB test. That ASVAB information is used by the military. It also gives students broader career exploration. And then you have examples of the word knowledge and paragraph comprehension tests for the ASVAB to know what the expectations there are for kids. What kind of tests they have to take to pursue that as a post-secondary option. And now I'm going to turn this back over to Harold to talk to you about 21st century skills.
Thank you, Lon. She does a nice job of tying in those things. At least she does for me. 21st Century Skills, some of you may have been out to the Partnership for 21st Century Skills website. If you haven't, I would suggest that you would go. But it's very, very interesting, and it, to me, if I go back to the beginning of the presentation and we talk about employability skills, I refer to 21st century skills as being employability skills on steroids, because they are all the things we've been teaching in Career Tech Ed in the past to try and make that well-rounded individual, but they've included a few things that are new, and some of those would be a little more on the creativity and the innovation piece, and we've always kind of taught that through our curriculum, but we've probably not emphasized it. So many times I look at my own father, who would have been the perfect Career Tech student had they offered Career Tech at that point in time, because he is so innovative and so creative. In his retirement now, he works on classic cars, and he can sew the interior because he has 2 industrial sewing machines in his basement. He can also paint the exterior of it and repair the engine and so on. I mean, it just amazes me. So his hands-on skills, and the creativity and the innovation is just something he takes for granted. And yet, so many times when we talk to students and we give them a problem, they look at us and say, so what's the right answer, Mr. Newhouse? And in so many cases in today's world, there is not a right answer. And it's a little scary, if you've watched Jeopardy any this week, and Watson did quite well. Watson kicked some tail. And it was just amazing to me to think about the technology that is there, and the critical thinking that took place because we were able to take numbers and just put them in a certain order. It's a little scary. But we're not there yet. You saw that he failed on some questions. And so there's still hope that the human mind is ahead. At least I think so. And, but if we do not challenge our students to take and think creatively and innovatively, it won't be long until we won't really need that skill anymore. And so I think that we have to foster that part of the 21st century skills. Some additional ones, they talk about media literacy, and it's interesting, the media literacy comes not only from media access and creation of websites and those things, but also being able to read and digest. It scares me a little bit when my daughter, who's 10 years old, goes and looks at a website, and I'm thinking in my mind, does she trust everything on the computer? You know, that's a little scary because we're still a little skeptical. But we didn't grow up with that as our resource. You know, we went to books, we went to the library, we went to the encyclopedia, we went to what we knew at that point in time to be trusted sources. So being able to put a value judgment on the media that that's brought to us each and every day and just pounded at us. You know, just because it's on Twitter doesn't mean, you know, we need to believe it. You know, we need to have some evaluation of it. So, in my mind, 21st century skills need to be intertwined with all those academics that we have, and I hope that from your standpoint that you're looking at those critically and trying to include those in courses of study and into the documents that allow students to learn those hand in hand as they go through their academic education. And those are my thoughts on 21st century skills.
Well, I just want to say one more time that I firmly believe that career tech education is the Common Core and more. We need, in career tech education, we need to prepare students for post-secondary education. We need to have them at those high levels of literacy. We're also emphasizing the 21st century skills and employability skills and giving them job skills. You know, I'm where I am because I really loved English. And I'm also really proud to be at a career technical school. I want to challenge your thinking because I'm not sure, as much as I can enjoy Beowulf, I'm not sure that analyzing Beowulf, those skills are going to transfer to real life skills. And I do think that we need to make some shift in what we teach and how we think about English language arts to get into informative reading, document literacy, persuasive writing, those kinds of things. And it takes us a little outside of our comfort zone. And over the years, I've watched the English teachers at our school make that shift. You know, have you ever experienced someone who smoked and quit? You know how they become sort of like uber passionate about not smoking? Well, and I don't want you to think that I'm equating Beowulf with smoking. Beowulf is much better than smoking. But as I watch the teachers at our school make that shift, they become very passionate about meeting students' needs in a somewhat non-traditional way in English language arts. And I want to invite you to make that shift in your mind also, and it will help us all meet common goals. Thank you very much.